Okay. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We're recording here from Hashkifa Studios. You can see it's a very different setting, and that is because we're recording tomorrow's shiur, Shabbos' shiur, early on Friday, and so we can't record it live because I keep Shabbos. So therefore, we are going to learn tomorrow's daf. We're recording tomorrow's daf today. Tomorrow's daf is Yitches. We're up to the bottom of Yitzayin at Beis. 6 lines in the bottom. So just a recap quickly. Yesterday we learned Reb Shimon learns a bunch of different kavachomers to teach you different isurim. Gemara wants to know, if you learn these isurim from a kavachomer, the halacha is you can't get malchus for such an isur. Why? Because before we can punish someone, the Torah has to explicitly state in a pasuk, don't do A, B, and C, because if you do A, B, and C, we're going to punish you. If that's not explicitly stated in the pasuk, you learn from a kavachomer, you can't get punished for it. So asks the Gemara, all these isurim Reb Shimon learns from the pasuk in yesterday's daf, can you get malchus on it? It's kavachomers, and the halacha is ein mazhirin min adin. And afil madama einshem min adin. Even if you say that the actual einish doesn't have to be explicit in the pasuk, you can learn the einish itself. Right? After the Torah gives a hazhara, a warning, you have the Torah to explain again. If he did it, he gets a certain einish. So even if you say that einshim adin, you can get the einish based on a kavachomer, even though the Torah doesn't explicitly state it. He also agrees ein mazhirim adin, but the original warning, the initial warning has to come from a pasuk, not from a kavachomer. So how could Reb Shimon punish you with malchus? Say you get malchus on 5 different isurim that are learned from kavachomers. Gemara says. Answers the Gemara, no, you're right. Isura ba'alma. Reb Shimon he doesn't mean to say you're getting malchus. You're not getting malchus. It's just an isser. It's an isser lav. The Kavachomer is teaching you there's an isser lav, but you don't actually get malchus on it. Asks the Gemara, is that true? Va'amar Rava. Zar sha'ochel min ha'oil l'fnei zrika chutz l'chayma. Person takes one bite and he's over 5 different isurim. Right? A zar, a Yisrael that eats from an oila, which is not supposed to be eaten b'chlal. Not even by kohen. L'fnei zrika, before zrika's dam. Chutz l'chaim, outside of Yerushalayim, is problem outside of the Beis Avigdor, outside of Yerushalayim. You're not supposed to eat b'chlal. All these isurim, they're learned from kavachomers, and Reb Shimon loy kechamish. Reb Shimon says clearly you get 5 times malchus. How can you get malchus if it's learned from a kavachomer? Answers the Gemara here too. Chamisha isur nav. It doesn't mean you actually get malchus. It means you're over 5 isurim, isur lavim, that in other places would get malchus, but over here it's just an isser because it's a kavachomer. Asks the Gemara, "Vanat nan elu ina loikin." 1 second. Our Mishnah clearly says, "Elu ina loikin." You get malchus. These are the issurim you get malchus on, and one of the items on that list in our Mishnah is a kohen who eats bikurim before the bailam had a chance to read the parsha of bikurim, and that is learned from a kavachomer. If it's learned from a kavachomer, how could you get malchus on it? It says, "Elu ina loikin." Says the Gemara, "Elakroy yiseiru." Gemara says, you're right. You actually do get malchus on it. It's a kavachomer and ein mazhirim min adin. I have another drasha. The truth is, there's a whole extra pasuk in the Torah that from there you learn you get malchus. It's not even a kavachomer. It's a kroy yisera. Where's the kroy yisera? Mirdi. Ksiv, it says in the Torah, v'havesim shama. Gemara doesn't bring the whole pasuk. I'm going to read the whole pasuk. V'havesim shama, a whole list, should bring to Hashem, l'fnei Hashem l'kechem, oil seichem, zivchechem, asur seichem, tumas yedchem, nedvechem, neveseichem, evchoris b'karchem, v'tzainchem. V'achaltem sham, l'fnei Hashem l'kechem. You should eat it in front of Hashem. So here you have a mitzvah in the Torah to bring karbanos, oil shlamim, ma'aser sheni bikurim, or karbanos nedarim and nedavis, should all bring it to Hashem. Says the Gemara, when the Torah concludes there, lesucha la'oichlam, lichtev rachmanu lesucha la'ochlam b'shirecha, and that's it. Yeah, the Torah could have concluded this entire pasuk with one lav, and this lav would go on all those items mentioned in the list in that pasuk. So that's it, and I would have had a lav on everything. Why does the Torah have to explicitly state each item separately again? Why does the Torah have to say it again? That whole list is mentioned again in Pasuk Yud Zayin. Yeah, it says, "L'sucha lecha v'shirecha," I said, "The goncha, tiroishcha, yitzirecha, b'chariz b'karcha, v'tzenecha, nadarecha, netvesecha." The whole list is mentioned again. It's redundant. There are no extra words in the Torah. Torah could have just said Loi sucha la'oichlam on the list mentioned above, and you have a lav on each of those things that you don't bring. Why does the Torah have to mention again everything? The fact that Torah mentions the whole list again, you learn from that the extra pasuk, those extra items mentioned again, different lavim, and one of them would be that you cannot eat bikurim, Kohen can eat bikurim before the Bailam reads the parsha. And that is not learned from a Kal V'chomer. It's learned from that Kroyasera in that extra pasuk where the Torah re-mentions all the items in that list. And therefore, the Mishnah is correct in saying, Elohein aloiken, you would get Malkas on it because it's a Kroyasera, it's not Mazhirim and Adin. Now the Gemara is going to go back to the original statement of Rava we just brought. Gufa Amar Rava. Zar sha'achol min ha'oila lifnei zrika chutz l'chayma. Reb Shimon loike chamesh. You get 5 times Malkus because you're over on 5 different Isurim. So, what are the 5 different Isurim that you're over? Just to mention quickly, the Isurim would be A, you're eating an oila, right? Now you eat an oila. Oila gets consumed completely on Mizbeach. Number 2 is Tzazar. Azar is Oichel Hekdesh, is also Chayv Malkus. Number 3, it's Lefnei Zrika. It's Koydem Zrika's Dam, which is a separate Isser. You're not allowed to eat Koydem Zrika's Dam. And number 4 and 5 is really Chutz L'chayma. So that's outside of the Azar and outside of the Chayma. So you have 5 Isurim. Gemara is going to ask different questions now. The Chayr should be violating more Isurim than these 5. There are other Isurim, other Psukim. Why do you have an additional Isser of V'zar lo yoichel ki kodesh? This pasuk is mentioned. Actually, interesting. We're in Parsha Shmini right now, and this pasuk is mentioned by the Shiva Simei Meluim. Yeah, you have Aaron and Banav had to stay in the Oil Moed to watch Moshe Rabbeinu do the avodah, so they can learn 7 days on what to do, and then it's like a training period, and then the 8th day, which is Bayom Hashmini, this week's Parsha. Today we're going into Shabbos of Shmini. The 8th day is when they go out, and that's when they start doing the avodah themselves. But at this point, this is V'zar lo yochel kodeshem. Moshe Rabbeinu shechted what's known as the Eila Miluim, and he would feed it to Aaron Ubanav. So the Torah says V'zar lo yochel. Only Aaron Ubanav can eat from the Eila Miluim, but a zar cannot eat because it's kodesh. Says the Gemara, why isn't that an additional lav for a zar that eats hektish? Why is he like a chamesh? He should be like a sheish. Another pasuk here. Says the Gemara, no. Hani mili, you can't use that pasuk. You know why? Because hani mileichad l'kahanim chazi. That carbon really is fitting to eat by the kahanim. Aaron Abanav had a mitzvah to eat that carbon. And so a carbon which is chazi l'kahanim, there the Torah says Zar shouldn't eat that carbon. That's the lav. But hacha by an oila, Rabba's members by an oila. The lekahanim nami loy chazi, a kain is not allowed to eat an oila. You can't use a pasuk, a lav from a pasuk that is talking about a carbon that is fitting to kahanim that a kain is allowed to eat from, and apply that lav to a carbon that even a kain is not allowed to eat from, and therefore you can't add that additional lav and say like a sheish. Asks the Gemara, they have another pasuk. Pasuk by Basa Basad Trefel Sechelu and the Chachamim Darshan that any carbon Kibashi Yotza Basar Chutz L'Mechitzasai Nasar, that it's not just a trefa. Any basar that's basada, in other words, it's out on the outskirts, on the outside of from where you're allowed to eat it, where you should be eating it. Well, let's say Toidish Lomim inside Yerushalayim or Chatas and Nashim inside the Azar. If it's brought outside of the parameters from where you're allowed to eat it, the halach is it's Basa Basad L'Sechelu, it's a lav. And here you have an oila. Right, the case of Rav Zar she'achal min ha'oila chutz lachayma, so that's a lav of basa basad leisachelu. Mashan immediately no, you can't use that lav either here because heichad b'fnem chazi. Over there, at least if you eat it inside the azara, inside the chayma, right, that drasha is going on. You have to eat it where you're supposed to, and therefore, if you take it out from the area that you're supposed to eat it in, there you're over of basa basad leisachelu. But hacha by an oila the b'fnem nami lechazi, you can't eat it anywhere, so you can't apply that lav. What about Rebbe Eliezer's memra? He learns a different isser. Dam Rebbe Eliezer lo yochel ki koideshu, that noiser, any leftovers from a carbon, you didn't eat it in the allotted time period, the halacha is a lav, lo yo'achal ki koideshu, you're not allowed to eat it. So over here, kol shabakoidesh pasul, ba'akasav litan loisas alechilasai, anything that's, any kachim that became pasul, so the Torah says there's a lav. So since a basar oila that's yotza mechutz la'azara is nichlal in kachim shenifsalu, it's kodesh that became pasul, so that's also subject to the lav of lo ya'achal ki kodeshu. So why doesn't Rava mention like a sheish? She get malka 6 times. You know why? 5 as mentioned before, and then the 6th lav is lo ya'achal ki kodeshu. Answers the Gemara, no. Can't use that lav in this case. Hani milech the kodem psulei chazi. That's only if it was fitting to eat before it became possible. We're talking about an oila. Oila you can never eat. So therefore, the halacha is you're not over on that. That lav is not subject to an oila. And finally, the Gemara's last kasha is, I have another lav, like Rabbi Eliezer says, the time Rabbi Eliezer, Omer kol shu b'kolol tia, any carbon that is nichlal in the asay of kolol tia, it has to be completely consumed on the mizbeach. Yeah, the halacha is there's a lav loisa yochel. It says there loisa yochel, the end of the pasuk. Litan loisa selachilasa. There's a loisa say on a carbon which is supposed to completely be consumed on the mizbeach, not to eat from it. So that is mamish the case of an oila. So if it's the case of an oila, it should be like a sheish. It's an additional lav. And where's the enechanami? You're right. Really, on basar oila, you should get malchus for this lav also. The Rava that says like a chamesh, that's only mahai kraka amar. He's only dealing with the isurim that is learned locally from this specific pasuk of lesucha lechel b'shirecha. If you want to add up all the averas the guy did, and you want to add up how much malchus he gets, for sure, you got 6, because there's another lav of kolol tia leisa achel, it's an oila that should be consumed on the mizbeach, you're not allowed to eat from it. But Rava says like a chamesh because he's dealing with the pasuk of lesucha lechel b'shirecha, the local pasuk. That you learn the Yisurim from there, and the Yisurim learned from there is only 5. That's it. Finished. Okay. Now we go to a similar conversation with regard to hektish, eating from kachim. Amar of Gidol Amarav. Koyin sha'ochol mechates va'oshem lefnei zrika loika. We know that kachim kudishim, chatas and asham, is kachim kudishim, so the koyin, right? Kahanim oichlam and bailam miskapra. The kohen eats and the bailam is miskaper. Now the kohen cannot eat from chatas and asham before zrikas dam. Right? It's a lav. So what happens? Kohen she'achlam chatas asham lefnei zrika loika gets malchus my time and Amar Kra. It's a pasuk. Va'achlu oisam asher kupar behem. That you should eat from the. Again, we're going back to the pasuk of Eila Miluim. Right? Asher kupar behem, that Arnabonav, they ate from the Elam Alum for a kapara. Rashi says in the Chumash, the kapara was for the Zoris and the Tu'evis, for whatever they needed kapara for. And it says clearly, la'acher kapara en, only if you eat from the carbon for the sake of a kapara. In other words, you already had a kapara through the Zrikas Adam. The Zrikas Adam is the Ikir kapara. So it means you can only eat from it after kapara. Lefnei kapara loy. But before Zrikas Adam, there's no kapara yet without Zrikas Adam, so you're not allowed to eat from it. It's only achlo isam asher kupar behem that already had a kapara. You already had Zrikas Adam. So the Gemara says, Lav abo mechlal asay lavu. What do you see from here? This lav, it doesn't say the word loy here. It only says, va'achlo oisam asher kupar behem, which is mashma, it's an inference. You infer from this, you can only eat from it only after the kapara happened, which is Zrikas Dam. The mashmos is before Zrikas Dam, right? Then you have a lav, you can't eat. There's no lav here, there's no mefurish loy, it doesn't say loy soichal. So, but it's a lav abba mechlasi, you infer it from the asay that don't do it unless you already had a kapara. So the Gemara says, Mosiv Rava, is it true that a lav abba mechlal say? You treat like a lava, you get malchus on it. There's a pasuk in Parashas Re'eh. It says, gives you the shnei simone tahira of a behema. What's a kosher animal? Kosher animal is malas geira, right? Choose its cud, and it has mafreses paras v'shtas. It has split hoofs. So those are the simonim of a kosher animal. Oisa techelu. Only her you should eat. Oisa techelu, you're medayik ve'ein behema acheres techelu. That means it's a lav haba machlal aseh. It says oisa techelu, make sure you eat that alone, not anything else. If you could comment, if it's true that you get malchus and a lav haba machlal aseh, so why does the pasuk after that conclude that all the other animals that don't have these two simone tahira you should not eat? Why didn't you before shalav? I already know it from a lav b'machlal aseh. It says oisa techelu. Must be that a lav b'machlal aseh doesn't subject you to malchus, doesn't give you malchus, and therefore you need the additional lav. So the kasha is, so what about? So how could Rav Gidl Marav's statement be true by a kohen that ate chatas v'oshim lefnei zrika, they get malchus? Why would you get malchus lav b'machlal aseh? You see from the other parsha under A, by simone tahira, that you need an additional lav to give you malchus. It's not enough to give you a malchus melava b'machlal aseh. So if you want to, you have to rephrase Rav Gidl Marav's memra. He said something else. Zor she'ochal mechatas v'osham lefnei zrika potter. A zar that eats from mechatas v'osham lefnei. We're not talking about a kohen. Here we're not talking about a kohen. We're talking about a zar, a Yisrael that eats from mechatas and a osham before the zrika. Then he's potter from malchus. That's interesting. My timer. The omar krova ochlu oisam asher kupar behem. The beginning of that pasuk says, Kahanim should eat from the Eila Meluim, from that carbon, which is mechaper for them. Only whatever carbon the Kahanim eat from gives them a kapara, then Karina and Bey, on such a carbon a Zar can't eat from. But Lu Yitzir, the Kohen would have eaten from this carbon. He wouldn't have had a kapara because you didn't sprinkle the blood yet. Then there's no lav of a Zar Yochel. So that's already a different halacha, a different chiddush. And here you have before shalav. It's not a lav b'machlal aseh. The lav is, don't eat, a Zar should not eat from a chatas and a osham that is, that already had zrikas damim. Because that kind of carbon is kupar behem, has a kapara. But a Zar that eats from a carbon that is lefnei zrikas damim, he's potter from malchus because of the context of that pasuk. It sounds like it's only asher kupar behem, only once he had zrikas damim. That's the isser of Zar Yochel ki koydeshem. Okay. Omer Reb Elazar Reb Oishi. Now we go into another sugya of bikurim. We go back actually, the original sugya of the Mishnah, the first sugya of our Mishnah of bikurim, where the kriya is ma'akev, whether you need kriya. Omer Reb Elazar Omer Reb Oishi. Bikurim hanocha ma'akeves behen. We know a person brings bikurim, he comes into the azara, and he has to put down the bikurim, the produce, the first produce, in front of the mizbeach. Kriya ein ma'akev behen, but kriya's parshas bikurim is not ma'akev. Okay, that is his chiddush. Asks the Gemara, Mi Amar B'Elazar Hachi, V'Amar B'Elazar Rabbi Shia, Hifresh bikurim koydem l'chag, v'Over alein achag. The person is mafresh bikurim before Sukkos, and Sukkos passes by. I wanted to say Sukkos passes over, but I don't know. He's have to pass over Sukkos. Yeah, I ever heard that? Okay. Yeah, I think it's a Pesach Kron says he once fell on Sukkos and he was in the hospital, and somebody came to visit him. He said, "I think this is the only time Pesach fell on Sukkos." So here you have Sukkos. You know, the halacha is that when do you harvest your fruits? You harvest it usually, right? Chag. Chag HaKotzer. When you harvest on Shavuos. Shavuos, you harvest the fruits, and that's when you're supposed to bring bikurim, right? So you can bring it from Shavuos to Sukkos. And when you bring bikurim in that time frame, that's when you read the parsha of bikurim, because the parsha of bikurim, it says, V'samachta b'chol hatoiv asher nasach Hashem elokecha. Part of the parsha of bikurim is you should be happy, and Zman Simcha is ben Shavuos l'Sukkos. That's the Zman Simcha. That's how Chazal understood it, because that's when people are harvesting and really gathering inward all their produce they worked hard for the entire year. So that's a Zman Simcha, Shavuos to Sukkos. But past Sukkos you can't read the parsha anymore because it's not Zman Simcha. It says Samachta b'chol hatoiv. So what happens if a guy who's mafresh bikurim, right, koydem l'chag, between Shavuos and Sukkos, v'over alein achag, and he didn't bring it to Beis HaMikdash. Yirkavu. Halacha is he has to let it rot. My love. Why should he let it rot? Why can't you bring it to the Beis Hamikdash? Give it to the Kohen. Because you can't fulfill the mitzvah of Kriya. The mitzvah of Kriya is only between Shavuos and Sukkos. Samachtav Chaladev doesn't apply after Sukkos. If you're right, the Rabbi Shia said, Kriya is not ma'akiv, Amma Yirkavu. Still, you can bring the Bikurim even after Sukkos. You can't lean the parsha? No problem. Don't lean the parsha. You don't have to lean the parsha b'di'evet. B'di'evet, it's okay without leaning it. So the Gemara says, no. Really, I'll tell you that K'd Reb Zera. The Amar Reb Zera, Kol Roy Lebila, Ein Bila Ma'akeves, V'choshe Ein Roy Lebila, Bila Ma'akeves Boy. You can't prove from the fact that you cannot bring Bikurim after Sukkos that Kriya is Ma'akev. Really, I'll tell you, Kriya is not Ma'akev. But it's not Ma'akev. In other words, if you don't read the Parashat Bikurim, it's not Ma'akev, the Kohen could still eat from it, only if you could, but you didn't do it. But if you can't do it anymore, then it's Ma'akev. And this is the famous Reb Zera brought in Shas many times, because Reb Zera, Kol Roy Lebila. We bring a carbon mincha. Carbon mincha is brought from oil and flour, and you have to mix it. What if you don't mix it? So Reb Zera says, if it's Roy Lebila, if you could mix it, Ein Bila Ma'akeves Boy. So the carb is a good carb, it's a good carbon mincha. Even if you didn't mix it, but if you could, it's Roy, then you're okay. B'di'evet. V'chol she'enoi Roy Lebila. Let's say the ratio-wise, it wouldn't mix well or whatever. There's a reason why it wouldn't be Roy Lebila. Bila Ma'akeves Boy. Then Bila would be Ma'akev and the carbon would not be good. Here too, between Shavuos and Sukkos, if you don't read the Parashat Bikurim, since you could read it because it's Zman Simcha, then Kriya is not Ma'akev. It's Roy Lebila. Only after Sukkos, where you can't, even if you wanted to, you can't read the Parsha anymore, that's when Kriya is Ma'akev. Rabbi Yaakov Masna k'd Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yaakov learned this memra b'shem Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, not b'shem Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Yochanan, like we just said. The kasha leid Rabbi Yochanan ad Rabbi Yochanan. He had a kasha, a stira from Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan. And me Amar Rabbi Yochanan bikurim. Hanocha ma'akeves behen, kriya ein ma'akeves behen. Did Rabbi Yochanan really say this statement that kriyas parshas habikurim is not ma'akev? V'oboyim and Rabbi Rabbi Yochanan bikurim ein masay matoron lekahanim. Rabbi asked Rabbi Yochanan, from when can a kohen eat bikurim? Amalei haruyin lekriya mishakara alein. If it's roy lekriya, only if you read the Parashat Bikurim. V'she'ein ruyin l'kriya, mishiro pnei habayis. Only once it enters the azara. So kasha kriya. Here you have a stira between kriya, because the first member of Rabbi Yochanan says kriya is not ma'akev. And here, when Rabbi Asi asked Rabbi Yochanan, he says that a ru'uyin l'kriya, only mishakar alein, only once he reads. You see, kriya is ma'akev. And kasha anocha. It's also kasha anocha, because in the first statement it says hanocha is ma'akev. In the second statement it says mishiro pnei abayis. Even before you put it down in front of the mizbeach, as soon as it enters the azara, from that stage, from that point and on, the kohen could already eat it. So is it mishiro pnei abayis, or is it mishenicha lefnei mizbeach? Which, at what point can you eat from it? It's a stira in Rabbi Yochanan. So Gemara says kriya loy kasha. No, it's not a stira. When Rabbi Yochanan said it, the different times that he said it differently. It was inconsistent. It's because Harab Shimon Harabanan. At one point when he said, for example, he said that kriya is not ma'akev. That's in Reb Shimon. He said it according to Reb Shimon, who says kriya is not ma'akev. And kriya is ma'akev, that's Reb Shimon. And kriya is not ma'akev, that's the Rabbanan. So that's the answer. That's the answer to the contradiction of kriya. Right? Reb Shimon holds that kriya's parashas habikurim is ma'akev, and therefore, when Rabbi Yochanan said it's ma'akev, he was just quoting Reb Shimon. And when he said it's not ma'akev, he was quoting the Rabbanan. When he said that you need re'iyas pnei abayis, that's when he was saying that he was saying it according to the Rabbanan. When he said you need hanoch lefnei hamizbeach, that's when he said, according to Rabbi Yehuda. The opposite. Again, I got confused it again. When Rabbi Yochanan said that you have to bring it, as soon as you bring it into the Azara, it's good enough. The kohen can eat already as soon as you bring it to the Azara. That's Rabbi Yehuda. And when he said you needed hanocha l'fnei hamizbeach, that's according to the Rabbanan. The Gemara is going to explain who the Rabbanan is. Okay, let's see. My Rabbi Yehuda. Where do you see Rabbi Yehuda who holds that you don't actually have to put it down in front of the mizbeach for the kohen to be able to eat it? It says in the Torah, you should put it l'fnei Hashem Elokecho. This hanocha doesn't mean actual hanocha, to put it down. It means tnufa, it means to raise it up. How do you know to take it out from the literal meaning of hanocha? So what do you do with the word ve'nachtoi? Because it already says ve'nichoi. So the second ve'nachtoi is not doubling down, making sure you put it mamish in front of the mizbeach. It's referring to tnufa. So anytime the Torah doesn't double down and doesn't repeat the same idea twice, means that if you didn't do it, it's okay. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, as soon as you come into the Azara, Mishiro Pnei Abayis, you don't need Hanocha Mamish. Like Atchila, you do. But the Eved, Kohen can eat ready from when it's Mishiro Pnei Abayis, because the second Ve'enachta is going with Nufa. And Mantana the Palagale Rabbi Yehuda, who's Choylek Rabbi Yehuda, Belez V'Yankov Yitanya, V'lo Kach Kohen Atena B'Yodecho. Kohen should take the basket from your hand. Limit al Bikurim Shte'unet Nufa. It's coming to teach you that Bikurim need Tnufa. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. My time, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. How does he know that miyodecho means tnufa? Asi yad yad mishlamim. Ksiv kohen te'atan miyodecho. Ksiv yodav tvi'eno is ishe Hashem. Ma kan kohen aflalon kohen malalon bailam afkan bailam. You learn one teaches on the other. They need kohen and bailam together to lift it. Okay, it said maniach kohen yodav tachasid the bailam and mainif. So the kohen puts his hand under the hands of the bailam, and they both raise it up, and that's how you do tnufa. But
stop after this one.
Yeah, stop over here. Yeah. And just to end is that so over here he learned some of yodecha. So the second ve'inachtoi, according to Belez Yaakov, is doubling down. You need hanocha l'fnei hamizbeach. So therefore he holds that the kohen cannot eat from the bikurim until he actually puts it down in front of the mizbeach. Okay, so we'll stop over here. I just want to end because in honor of Rabbi Avigdor Miller's yahrzeit today, Avigdor Miller's yahrzeit is today, Chav Zayin Nisan, in 2001, 24 years ago, when he passed away. I remember it was literally right before my Zman. I was learning a Pesach at the time in yeshiva, right before I went back to yeshiva for the summer Zman. And it was his Levaya. I went to the Levaya in Ocean Parkway. It's a big Levaya. I remember I was very moved. I listened to Reb Simcha Bunim Cohn's Hesped, his grandson-in-law, very moving Hesped, made a strong Roshim on me. But really what I do want to share is a couple of weeks ago, I was here in LA davening Mincha at the Koilel, and next to me we had I saw a guy davening next to me. He was like Avigdor Miller's grandson, Rabbi Yisrael Brag. So I asked him after Mincha, I said, can you tell me a Maisa about your grandfather? And he told me this amazing story. I thought about it for a long time, for many, many days afterward. He said that when Avigdor Miller was sick with his final illness, they took turns being next to Rav Miller in the hospital. They had a whole rotation, and it was his turn the night before he passed away. They didn't know he was going to pass away the next day, but 3 o'clock in the morning, he was sitting next to Avigdor Miller's bed, by his bedside, and he hears his grandfather, Rav Miller, whispering to himself quietly, and he goes, how can I thank you, Hashem? How can I thank you? How can I thank you? You gave me such good shidduchim for my children. And at that point, his grandson told me, Avigdor Miller was already in his 90s. His youngest child had been married for more than 40 years. So the last night of his life, what kept Avigdor Miller awake was Ma'ashiv la Hashem kol tagmoloi uloi. How can I ever thank Hashem? That's what kept him awake at night. I just thought it was an amazing, amazing story. That gratitude has no expiration date. That's what he taught us. That gratitude has no expiration date. You can go back. Just like in the English language, there's the word resentment. right? Resentment is usually used in a negative context, right? Resentment comes from the words re-sentiment, right? You want to re-experience a feeling. Usually when somebody hurts you, it's easy. 10 years later, you're still re-experiencing the feeling of resentment. Like resentment, right? You're imagining it, and you're thinking about it, and you're obsessed with it, right? I asked ChatGPT, I was like, is there a word in English for resentment in the positive context? And they said no. In Hebrew, actually, there is. You know what it is? It's Pesach. It's Purim. It's Chanukah. Every Yom Tov. We're thanking Hashem for Allah Nisim from thousands of years ago. We re-experience feelings of gratitude all the time. It's mamash a big yesod in Yiddishkeit. So Avigdor Miller lived it. 40 years later, he's still thinking about the chesed Hashem did for him. So if you were to ask him, what could you do in his memory? I don't know if he would say learn a mission. Maybe he would say, think about a toiva that Hashem had done for you and try to re-experience that feeling of gratitude you had when you experienced that hatava. And thank Hashem for it.